What I've learned as a new fund manager, a lot of people, we're just online a few minutes ago looking at Wefunder and Investor and some other really cool funds, and I can't wait to dig into some of those. And I've thought about using crowdfunding as a means for funding inside of Affinity Capital. And you see these new funds pop up, and it looks really cool. And you see people using, like yourself, for your family and your endeavors as an investor and as an investor group. People look at the internet and they look at these new funds with these nice tech names, and we go, wow. You either want to participate in a fund, which is easier. You just put your money in and wait to get good returns. Some of us are more ambitious and decide that while we want to start a fund, and we want to start a fund, as you guys have done, to do flips, or to start a fund to do large multifamily. And maybe a guy's a good business guy like yourself, or has an accounting degree like myself, and has been in business for a good period of time and successful like yourself and a lot of your friends that I know we have our mutual friends. And so with our business background, it just doesn't look that hard. Right. You get a good attorney, you set up the documents, it's called a fund for a flip. For example, you're gonna raise $150,000 to buy it, and maybe you're gonna raise another $50,000 for rehab, so it's $200,000 fund if you wanna do it that way, with a good return to your investors. And it's easy doing that one flip. But all of a sudden, if you're doing 10 flips and you've got 10 different investor groups, and you're now reporting, now you're really more of a fund manager. Just doing the one flip, you're a fund manager, but you just got one project, maybe two. You're ambitious, maybe three. Maybe three. But when you have a crowd fund or a fund that has more than three, let's just call it 20 investors, something happens, because now you are really maturing or growing into the responsibilities of a larger fund manager. These large funds that have dozens of employees, where it's very administrative. You've got taxes, you've got K-1s, you've got monthly or quarterly financial reporting. And it's just the way life is in school or in church or in a hamburger shop. Starbucks, out of 1,000 customers, you're gonna have some customers that are not satisfied. 1%, 2%, 3%, 10%. And so then as the manager of that Starbucks or that fund, then in addition to being good at finding flips or finding apartments and doing the work, now you've got your people skills get tested, because now you've got to deal with people with all of the financial responsibilities. So in running, in my most recent experience this year and last year, 2025, 2026, has not just been my skills to find great apartments and find people to put the money in. I've had to grow my skills as a manager, not just as a manager, because not as a manager of the asset. There's different kinds of managers. There's asset managers, but I'm talking specifically about the people. My people management skills have had to grow. I thought I always have had good people management skills, but they've had to grow. So yeah.
I guess when they ain't happy, you got to grow some.
You've got to grow some, and depending on the person, if a person has thick skin, then somebody calls you up and sends you an email and they're unhappy. If you got thick skin, it doesn't dent you. You're like Superman. And if you're good, you got good listening skills and good communication skills. You have to listen to that person, and you have to care. So listen, care, and then you're thinking of solutions without interrupting. And then when they're finished, you have to appreciate the customer's always right, even though what they're kind of saying technically may not be right. Like if it's a 3 to 5 year deal, and they thought it was going to end at the second year because they heard that guy, the last one ended in the second year, and maybe this was the third year or the fourth year in a 5-year deal. So they're telling you that it's a failure when actually the documents say 3 to 5 years because of the economy, wars. We don't start wars with Iran and different things, whatever, recessions. We can't control those things. So the listening, and then even if the customer is technically wrong, that's not what's important. What's important is the fact that they're having some kind of an emergency, and then there's a discerning and a caring to like, well, what's going on? Is there a medical emergency, with your mom or a child? And you really need this money back. So then a couple of things happen. You realize that in the beginning, when you were inviting friends and family, if it's a friends and family type thing, and you were interviewing these investors, well, according to, investment ethics, I would call it as a former real estate agent, ethics, you're really not supposed to take more than like 20% of a person's investment portfolio. If a person has $1 million, if they have $1 million that they can put out there, you don't really want to take all of the $1 million. You take 200,000 or something like that.
Where did that number come from?
My attorneys. I had really early on, I had really good ethical attorneys. That says if a person only has $1,000 to invest, you don't want to take their whole $1,000, because then if the kitchen sink breaks down, the refrigerator breaks down, the car transmission goes out, that person's going to be coming back to you for $500, and that $500 is in a flip, and you cannot give it back. So what I learned, here recently last year is like, wow, at this level of investing in 100 units or 200 units or 300 units, et cetera, where, a person has put in, let's just call it $100,000. And let's just say it's 10 of them. Well, if 2 of them have an emergency, that's $200,000. It's like, wow, I need to have an extra $250,000 in a reserve account.
So you need to have an emergency fund for your fund.
Well, we don't want to call it an emergency fund. We like to call it reserve account.
Okay.
But yeah, emergency fund. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, so that hit me mid last year. I'm like, and so I'm growing as a fund manager. I'm like, wow. So I got to have an extra $250,000 in reserves. But then I watch a lot of Warren Buffett, on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And probably 2 years ago, I was watching a interview on Warren Buffett, and he was, I can't remember the numbers, but it was in the billions. They have so much in reserves, they could like run their company for like 4 years if there was another COVID, or like pay all salaries. They have so much in reserve. They probably have it in reserves, and it's some kind of a special account that's earning a higher rate of interest or whatever the case may be, so that they're, good stewards of that money. But I remembered that last year. I saw Buffett 2-3 years ago. And then last year when that happened with investors that were having some emergencies, and we didn't have $200,000, in reserves. We may have had $200,000 set aside for earnest money deposits, but we can't take an earnest money deposit that we may need on a 100 unit Monday and give it to an investor that has an emergency, because it's not fair to the other investors for us not to have the 100,000 to invest in a deal that can earn them more money.
Right.
You get it? Even though it's important for this person, but this person that's having the emergency is in a 3 to 5 year deal. So that's legal. And having 100,000 or 200,000 in reserves for earnest monies as a company policy, so that we can be good stewards and earn the most for the rest of it, that's legal. So you got 2 legal questions. But this one is bound by 3 to 5 years. And this one is just bound by doing the right thing. But in the middle stands me is leading a company, and it's like, okay, wow. So then I've got to turn up the heat, do projects that earn more money so that I can pay what we want to pay and have an
And
extra
reserve.
an extra emergency fund, $10,000 if it's for a flip situation, or 25,000, or if it's larger, 250,000. And as it gets bigger, someday it'll be 2.5 million.
Wow. Yeah. You know what? Hampton University taught me that. I think when we were on campus, because we're both Hamptonians, we were on campus the other day.
You should turn the camera around on you now.
Maybe I will.
So this goes back and forth a little bit, or we sit beside each other. How you want to do it?
You know what? We'll keep it the way it is.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is, and I think I shared with you, I was dissatisfied with the food on the cafeteria. This is 1987, 88. So I'm sitting there talking with the vice president. And I said, you guys are spending all this money on keeping the place looking pretty, because Hampton's campus is gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Right. I said,
But
you need to
the
spend
food's
more
horrible.
money on the food and on the dormitories, right? And I said, because we're the students, and if we're not here, Hampton disappears.
Yeah.
And he said,
you can't keep the grounds looking good.
Right. He said, young Varner, if another student didn't darken the hallways of Hampton University for 10 years, we could pay everyone on staff full salary. We wouldn't miss a beat. We're not dependent upon the students. And we also know
Wow.
that
That's that.
that's an endowment.
That's that endowment.
that endowment they have. And he said, we also know
President
that
Harvey
when our
put in
alumni
place.
come back and their college looks beautiful, they give more.
Oh wow! So there's a giving psychology.
Yeah, but when he talked about how having that reserve, that endowment that could feed it.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to realize how important it is to have that reserve, that emergency fund that you were talking about. Yeah.
For anything. I mean, we've heard that from financial planners just for the home. And for a person's home, have 3 months of income or 6 months of income in case of a COVID or anything, an illness. 1 year of income, and for years, man, I worked on that. I don't know how many friends or family we know that people that have 6 months of income, 1 year of income, and it wasn't until the 300 unit hit that all of a sudden, I had years of income. I just looked at it and it was like, wow, I went from maybe having 3 months of income prior to that deal, just from doing flips and other stuff that I had been doing. Didn't have a whole lot of savings, but I did have some reserve, and I had some good life insurance and stuff like that as well. But then at the end of the 300 unit, it was like, wow, and it's not going to just stay there. You got to reinvest that money. But for a few months, to have 3, 4, 5 years of income, in the bank, or was it more than that? It could have been 8 years of income in the bank. I'm like, okay, this is what they've been talking about. And then the next thought came was, this is not normal. Most people don't have 8 years or 10 years worth of income, in a
We don't
bank.
want to be most people.
Well, we don't want to be most people. We don't want to be most people. But then, honestly, what happened to me is I developed a desire to teach. That's why I do these Thursday nights. I developed, because a lot of times people come here, they can't afford to invest. So I'm hoping if I've got 8 people in here, hopefully 4 of them can afford to invest, and the other 4 maybe can't. But I honestly want them in here as much as I do the others, because you have to get educated. I had to get educated in commercial real estate. I was in residential real estate, selling houses and flipping houses and trying to build a couple of houses a year. The commercial education is totally different. So, yeah.